Hi, and welcome to episode 50 of The Adventures of Two Gray Mice. Today we're going to be talking about cruises and the news. Hi, and welcome to The Adventures of Two Gray Mice. I'm Meg.
And I'm Rob.
And we are Two Gray Mice. Hey folks, it's just me this week, and I thought today we'd talk a little bit about some of the trends that are happening in cruising, and really some of the locations that are more popular than others, and what the cruise lines are doing to enhance those locations or enhance their cruise ships to make enjoying those locations better, and where it's all going on. Now, I've known about most of this happening, and you hear about it like in piecemeal. You hear that, Royal Caribbean's doing this, or MSC's doing that, or Holland America's doing, something else. And it's not until you really sit down and you kind of start putting it together like a puzzle piece that you realize what's going on across the board with cruise lines. And what really kind of drove it home for me is, if you've listened to this podcast at ever before, you know that shortly Rob and I are going on a Virgin Voyages cruise from Seattle to Alaska. It is the Virgin season for Virgin Voyages in Alaska. And MSC is also experiencing Alaska for the first time this season. Alaska, since the pandemic, and when cruising came back, has increased, I think they said about 65% in the ships and the amount of cruise passengers that are going to Alaska. This, of course, is going to cause problems or opportunities, as Rob likes to say. So it's having a moment, and I can understand why. And I know this was a bucket list for us, definitely for me. And with a lot of things that are going on in politics and with our national parks and with our national preserved areas, I was kind of afraid that the untouched beauty of Alaska may not be around for very long. It may be around forever. I hope to God it is, but I wanted to see it while it was still that way. Now, since then, of course, I've learned that some days that when you're in Ketchikan, there's 5 cruise ships in there, meaning that there are more cruise ship passengers in Ketchikan that day than there are people that live in the area. And that's a lot of people. And it's, Alaska is more than just going someplace colder when it's warm, just like the Caribbean in many ways is more than just going someplace warm when it's cold. So many of the cruise lines are doing things to enhance our experiences there and to, of course, also encourage us going there. I mean, the first one that I've seen, of course, is Virgin Voyages built the Brilliant Lady purposely for Alaska and for the Panama Canal. Panama Canal is very old. It's very narrow. You have to be a certain kind of ship to literally fit through it. So where the Brilliant Lady has a very familiar layout to the other Virgin Voyages ships, they kind of sucked in the lifeboats so that it would fit through the Panama Canal. They also redecorated the inside and made more window space so that in the common areas, people, especially people that had inside cabins, would be able to look out the windows and see what was going on. And this is something that you see in a lot of ships that go to Alaska. A lot of the ships that go to Alaska, you'll find out, have indoor pools or pools that, can be indoor, outdoor. Because they would like you to, because you want to use a pool, and it's very often very chilly. The other, like I said earlier, MSC, which I'll be honest with you, I don't sell. It's not a cruise line I like very well. They have a lot of things they need to improve, I think, before me or the agency I work with will be selling them. But they have a ship that they have also built that is now in Alaska. They didn't build it. They dry docked it and then rehabbed it so it would fit. And it's also going out of Seattle. going up to the same spots. They all go to, Sitka, Ketchikan, Juneau, Isotrate Point, Victoria, Glacier National Bay, um, only allows a certain amount of cruise ships to go through every day. So if that's on your list, you're going to want to go back to the OGs, by the way. You're going to want to hit Holland America, maybe Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, Princess, because they're the ones that have that like contract to get in there. And even Juneau, the traffic, the onslaught of people coming into the city itself from these cruise ships has gotten so bad that they've actually, starting next year, are cutting back how many ships can be in port every day, every month, every year. So also then to this end, on top of that, cruise lines like Norwegian, who are known and have excellent cruises that go to Alaska, are helping the Alaskans and the people in Juneau build a separate port area that's on a small island off of Juneau. So you'd have to like take a ferry into Juneau, but it would bring the cruise passengers to a separate area. It wouldn't take them into downtown Juneau. It would take them off into a separate area that if you were going, whale watching or something along those lines, you could do it from there without having to go necessarily into downtown to try to break up that whole experience for the Native Alaskans. And this is something that, they all see. So I'm very curious what our cruise is going to look like. Because I know when we're in Sitka, I think we're the only ship. I think we're the only ship when we're in Port Rupert. Prince Rupert. I don't know why. I keep forgetting the name of that island. But I know we're one of 5 when we're in Ketchikan. So I'm curious how crowded it's going to be. At the same time, I'm from the Northeast. I live in New York. I grew up in New Jersey. I've always lived, in New York City's backyard. So I'm used to crowds. So will I think it's crowded? Or do just people that, are used to the 20,000 people that live there or whatever it is, in January, is that what they are seeing? And comparing it to the 30,000 people that are getting off those 5 ships. Something else we're seeing is that the cruise liners are extending the cruise period as much as they can. They're pushing out either ends. And I think they're going to keep pushing it until people don't book it or until the sea captains themselves are like, no, it's not good. So the first cruises used to be in late May and the last cruises used to be in mid-September. Now they're in late April, mid-April, and they're going to mid-October. You're not really bright yet and you're pretty dark when you're in October. It's that time they're just keep stretching it out so more and more people can go. And of course the shoulder season, which is the opposite ends, the October and the April, are considerably less expensive. So people that have always wanted to go, but that price tag is what's kept them from going, are then going to hop onto an Alaskan cruise because that's what it's like. And it's cold. That's when you may actually see snow when you're in Alaska. That's definitely when these areas of Alaska do see snow, obviously, but not as much as others. It's a rainforest, so that rainforest temperate kind of thing kind of keeps it in a basic temperature range. So, you've got so many, and the cruise ships themselves are getting bigger and bigger. You used to only have the smaller ships, like Brilliant Lady's a relatively small ship. Holland America ships are smaller ships, they're beautiful ships. That would be when I go back, my dream is to go on Holland America. So, but now like Royal Caribbean's bringing their bigger ships up there, which I personally think are just too big for Alaska. 1, for the amount of people, and 2, how close can you get to a glacier when you're that big? But this is what they're doing to try to, of course, it's their business, but bring more and more people up there. But I think I've said but 12 million times now. At the same time, they realize, at least Norwegian realized, and I think all the rest of them will realize in time too, that they need to do something to help the people of Alaska with this overcrowding situation, or the pushback is gonna be too much. Now, a lot of them are starting land trips too, so like in Princess. Holland America does it as well, most of them do it. They have land versions too. So you go one way, 7 seas. You go one way, you end in Whittier, Juneau, and you get off the ship, and then you go up into by Denali and, the wilds up there, and Princess has built 4 resorts up there, I think, that you can then they're gorgeous and they're surrounded by all this nature, and then you can do, excursions from there. So they're trying to bring people, farther into Alaska, not just on the shoreline. Holland America has the same thing where you can, you go and you explore up. Then you also, of course, on top of this, you have what they call like an explorer vessel. So Uncruise, National Geographic, cruise lines like that considerably smaller. I think Uncruise has like 6 cabins or something like that. I mean, there's like 20 people on board, but you're exploring. It's a small ship. It can almost bring you right to the shore. They'll put you on a rubber dinghy and you go explore. You don't need to necessarily go to Ketchikan because they can set dock and you can go then explore easily right into the rainforest, which also sounds exciting and I would love to do. But at this point where, Alaska used to be high priced and it was kind of like a special occasion cruise, it's not anymore. There are so many out there now that are more affordable because so many people want to go. And you have them from Uncruise, which is expensive, but kind of down and dirty in the sense that, you're going out hiking every day, you're going fishing, you're going exploring, you're really getting your hands dirty, to a Royal Caribbean that has so much to do on board. Will have the indoor pools that is trying to be like a blend of like what we consider, what you would think of as a Caribbean cruise while giving you the Alaskan experience, all the way up to a Holland American that, has more suites than it does regular rooms in some ways and is gorgeous and has formal nights, to Regent Seven Seas that only has suites and is a very small ship and is very expensive to go, but gives you a completely different experience while you're there. So where if you go to Europe, you're not going to have this variety of ships anywhere besides like Alaska and maybe the Caribbean. Everywhere else, you kind of get one kind of ship. And in Alaska, you get this wide variety of ships that can be one way, up to Juneau or back down to Seattle or Vancouver or back and forth or 14 days and have a land excursion on the end. They're really trying to give us a varied experience for the Alaskan cruise. And the options can only be good for us, the traveler that want to experience, because you're going to be able to get a cruise you can afford in April or October, if you don't mind the fact that it's going to be very rainy and it's going to be a little cold. Or you can get the pampered spa-like experience while looking at the Alaskan thing, and then go to a Princess or some other resort that they're setting you up to that's gorgeous and go on excursions from there and still be pampered when you get back to the resort. So there's a lot of itinerary shifting happening. There's new ports being built. Like Prince Rupert is not a big cruise port. Victoria has always been where the cruise ships go. They leave out of Vancouver, and if they leave out of Seattle because they have to make one international stop, they would stop in Victoria. Well, Victoria is becoming very crowded with cruise ships. So now people are starting to go to Prince Rupert. So that, and of course, we're, the Alaskans and the Canadians are kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place. A great deal of their income and the money they make there is from these cruise ships, is from tourism. It's from people staying in these resorts. It's from them working in the resorts. It's from them having these, the lumberjack show. And these same people that do the lumberjack show are actual lumberjacks probably, other times of the year. Or people that are taking you on a whale watching in February are salmon fishing or Alaskan king crab fishing or something along those lines. So, or they make all their money between May and September. It's like this juxtaposition of what do you do when it's getting too crowded and too overrun, or that's how you make your money. How do you deal with it? And I think they'll figure it out. I think they're doing a pretty good job now, and I don't think we're at a point where it's going to hurt anybody's enjoyment of being on a cruise, especially with um, what's been going on and all the different cruises. But I mean, there also have been some environmental changes. Like we were supposed to go to the Tracy Arm Fjord, and we had to switch to Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier. So like those two, they're actually like you go into an alley and they go like this. One's on one side and one's on the other side. And most cruise ships would go one or the other. Well, now they all have to go to the one because Tracy Arm is calving. The ice is falling apart at such a rate that it's dangerous to be in there. And of course, that has everything to do with the fact that, our climate change is changing everything. So things are changing faster than, we expect it to. So it's also going to be this constant, what's going to happen next. But, that's about safety. It would be unsafe for any cruise ships being there with these large chunks of ice coming off sides of mountains. So like any cruise ship, your itinerary is always subject to change. If a hurricane happens in the Caribbean, you're not going through it. So it's definitely an interesting place to keep watch and a wonderful place, I hope, to go. Of course, more will be said later on. But the other place has been changing a lot. And I think for good reason, same kind of reasons, and not the same time, the Caribbean. Especially, me being on the East Coast. Big cruising season is the wintertime. You want to go to the Caribbean. You just want to get out of this cold. People still, of course, go to the Caribbean all year long. And what I've seen is like this race for the best private island. So MSC is currently building their own private island they're converting a portion of the Grand Lucian Resort in Freeport into a new 20-acre MSC Beach Club for MSC cruises and Explorer Journey guests. Construction is expected to begin in April, or it did begin in April, pending approvals, and the project is tied to a much larger cruise port development planned for the Freeport Harbor. So, the Bahamas, Nassau, Freeport, it's just constantly growing, going into Freeport instead of Nassau, even though Nassau's port is now beautiful, trying to spread the people out amongst the different islands. Royal Caribbean has Perfect Day at Coco Cay. They're opening up their Perfect Day in Mexico. They have their other beach club. I went past it, and right now I can't think of the name of it. Right there in Nassau by Paradise Island. Now that one you have to pay to go to. I don't understand why they have two free-ish ones and then one you have to pay to go to. What? I don't know. Norwegian has just completely redone the Great Stirrup Cay. Disney has, of course, Castaway Cay, and I guess about 18 months ago opened up Lookout Key. And it's this... People go on a Caribbean cruise, and I'll tell them, my clients, this. Very often in the Caribbean, the boat is your journey and your purpose more than where you're going. I loved Nassau, actually. I loved snorkeling in Nassau. I had a great time wandering around Nassau, but I'm not sure I need to go back to Nassau. And I know there's so many other islands out there. And I know, the Cayman Islands are absolutely gorgeous. And I would love to visit these islands, not on a cruise ship, to get to know them a little better. Um, we stopped in Puerto Plata in the Dominican Republic, and we didn't do an excursion. We just walked around and really got to understand the city. And again, right when you get off the port and off the ship, there's a whole developed area, like a swim club, pool club area that you can hang out in that most of the people on the cruise ship never left. And the rest of the island right there, and there was some people out there and some things happening, but you could see it's not a well-developed or attractive town. I enjoyed it because it was unique and different and had a spirit and a vitality to it that you could sense. But a lot of people wouldn't appreciate that and just want the pool club vibe. But I've never understood the pool club vibe. When I get off the ship, I want to be on a beach, just the beach club thing, because there's a pool on the ship. Why am I going to get off the ship to go in another pool? I've never understood that. But all the cruise lines now are creating this private destination that, you can just get off of and everything is still included. So you get off a, perfect day, your beverage package comes with you, your Wi-Fi package comes with you. You may have to pay for the adult area or the kids area, the slides, but there's a whole big areas that you don't have to pay for. Disney's Castaway Cay, everything's included except, of course, the alcohol. You know, uh, Norwegian is the same kind of thing. There's an area you have to pay for, but most of it's free, and your beverage packages go with you. So it is like an extension onto land, onto a beach club of these cruise ships. And, it's they're starting to include a lot of these islands, and I think that also it prevents the overcrowding of these towns because, Nassau can say, "No, we only take 2 ships, 3 ships." Actually, I think they take, like, 8. But, you know, and the ships themselves can then go to their own private island instead of a town that people live there and eat there and whatever. Of course, those people in Nassau or other parts of Bahamas are the ones working in these private islands, along with the cruise ship crews. So it's just very fascinating to me about what's been happening and how it's been going forward. The other thing that, little thing that's been happening, and most people like hear about it and like it goes off. A lot of the cruise ships, and the most recent one was Holland America, just to increase their gratuities or their what do they call them? Their service charges for sailings anytime after June 1st. So basically now by $1 per person per day. So it's now $18 per person per day for your gratuities while you're on the ship. And I know a lot of people have problems with prepaying their gratuities. And it's just $1. But if you have a cabin mate, it's $2. If you have kids, it's $4. And that's still, on a 7-day cruise for being Rob, it would still only be $14. But it's the little things that, can sometimes add up. And when I talk to clients, I always tell them that don't look at the stateroom number I give you. I mean, obviously, you look at the stateroom number I give you, but at the same time, look at what is included. Because very often, what's included in Holland America, let's say, okay? Yes, they have specialized restaurants, but most of the stuff is included, okay? I quoted one today, and the Wi-Fi was included, the drink package was included, $100 money towards an excursions were included, and a meal at one of the, pay for restaurants was included. So they're not going to nickel and dime you. Where, Royal Caribbean, I find, yes, you can do a Royal Caribbean and not get any of the extras, but they have just as many restaurants you have to pay for as they do free. You have to pay for soda. Disney Cruise Lines, you don't have to pay for soda. Virgin Voyages, you don't have to pay for soda. You only have to pay for things that have alcohol in them or your very fancy like smoothies and coffees and things like that. So you have to look at how everything goes. But I find that just recently, a lot of the cruise lines have been increasing their service charges just by $1 or 2, or the automatic tip that's put on your bar bill has gone from 18 to 20%. And people do have problems with that. Being a travel advisor is part of the service industry, but I was in the true service industry of restaurants. I was a banquet manager for a long time, and $18 a day. That's going to your head waiter, your assistant waiter, your room steward, the person who helps your room steward. So you're dividing that by 4 or 5 or 6, depending on where you are. And of course, the suite rooms and the concierge rooms, the tips go up because there's more people helping you. So, it was 16, so that's $4. You're tipping your waiter for 2 or 3 meals a day, $4. That's not a lot. So just something to also keep in your mind. Yes, tips are included. But at the end of your cruise, if somebody really went out of their way for you, try to keep them in mind and maybe leave them just a little something extra. If your, cabin person, your steward was just amazing, and whenever you went back into your room, there was fresh water and your bed was perfect or whatever, maybe just a little extra. These people are, not bringing home $10,000 a year. Well, whatever. I don't know why I said $10,000 a year. Hopefully they aren't bringing home $10,000 a year because nobody could live on that these days. So a little something from Carnival and a port that I want to go out of, and I'm not sure why. Baltimore. The Carnival Pride has been in dry dock and is now once again sailing from Baltimore to the Caribbean. It has a new casino upgrade, new retail experiences, carpeting. Of course, they redid, fix the engine, change the oil, or whatever else you do with a ship's engine. But they're going to do 10 nights out of Baltimore. So if you're not, not everybody wants to go down to Florida. Nobody ever wants to fly. But to that end, you can go out of Baltimore. They used to do Savannah, but not anymore. There's Norwegian goes out of Philadelphia, and many ships go out of New York and Boston. So all along the East Coast, from Boston all the way down to Miami, you can catch a cruise ship at least a day's drive along the East Coast and a little bit inland. Then, of course, once you get to the middle of America, you got Galveston. So this was just my quick little pep talk on cruises and what's been happening and where the hotspots seem to be. And I am very much looking forward to our Virgin Voyages cruise to Alaska. We leave here on the 19th to spend 3 days in Seattle before we get on the ship with the rest of my family on the 23rd. So that will be what Rob and I will talk about when we have our podcast for next week. Until then, stay well. Thank you for listening. You can find us on Instagram or check Instagram at 2 Gray Mice. Podcast, you can find me on TikTok at Gray Mice Travel. If you have any travel needs, you can find me at Gray Mice Travel on the web or Meg at graymicetravel.com. Have a great week, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.